Hey, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to talk about operators and expressions. In the last episode, we covered data types. I've already copied our template. I've called it video_5, and the only thing I've done in the index.php page is I set the title to operators and expressions, and the script, I've created a number of different variables that we're going to use here. So I just named the variables A, B, C, D, E, and F. And just a side note on naming variables, when you're writing code for your production environment, you want to use variable names that are descriptive. These are not very descriptive. I don't know what A really means. I don't know what B really means. I probably would name these, for example, C. That would be a variable I would call first name. And so it would probably look like something like this. Either camel case with first name, or I prefer snake case, so I'd name it something like that. In this particular example, I'm just going to go with all these variable names that aren't very descriptive because we're going to use these in nondescript ways. And I put some notes down here about the different operators that I want to use. Now, an operator is something that you use generally between two variables. So you can have an operator just like in math, A plus B. So that's what we're going to take a look at. We're going to take a look at some operators. And so to test these, I'm going to just up here, I'm going to create one more variable called X. And I'm not going to define it yet, but I'm going to use X throughout all of these examples. So X is equal to A plus B. Now A and B in this case are both numbers. So if I console log X, the value of X, the type of X, let's see what I get over here. I refresh. I can see X now has the value of 15, which makes sense. So A is 5, B is 10. 10 plus 5 is 15. What if I were to do something like X is equal to A minus B? And I do the console log again. Let's see what I get. So X in this case is minus 5. 5 minus 10 is minus 5. And it's a number. Type is number. What if I do X is A multiplied by B? I refresh and I get X is equal to 50. 5 times 10 is 50, and it's still a number. And then there's one more arithmetic thing that we normally see is A, say, divided by B. I refresh. A divided by B is 0.5. And for JavaScript, you don't have to declare as an integer. A lot of languages do that. You have to declare something as an integer or a float or a decimal. In JavaScript, it's just a number. So a number is anything that is numeric. So those are all arithmetic operators that we're most familiar with. So addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. There are others. There's a lot more, in fact. Let's just look at a %b. So this is the modulo operator. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what that puts out. The modulo operator is 5 in this case. So what's the remainder of 5 modulo 10? It's 5. And it's a number. That's kind of what we would expected. Let's say x is a to the power of b. What do we get here? So that is 5 to the 10th is this large number. What is it? That's like 9,765,625, and it's still a number. All right, so let's move on. Those are arithmetic operators. Let's try some different types of assignment operators. What if I assign x is equal to a? Well, what happens there? Let's see. I refresh this. You can see I can set x, which is a different variable, to the value of another variable. And what happens then if I change x, say x is equal to x plus 1, I can obviously add 1 to it. I want to do two console statements. I want to print a, and I also want to print the new value of x. So just see what that looks like. And you can see a is still at 5, and the variable x now is at 6. Here, I assigned the value of x to the value of a. It's not the same variable though. And so I still have this variable a, it has the value of 5, and it sticks around. So when I console log it out here, it's still at 5, it's still a number, but I changed the value of x by 1, I increased it by 1, and you can see that it changes to 6. This thing where we add 1 to numbers, it's so common that a lot of times there's shorthands for these things. So I can say x plus equals 1. Let's see what that gets us. And remember, x currently is at 6, so if I refresh, now I'm at 7. So this is a shorthand notation. It's the same thing as writing x is equal to x plus 1. Same exact thing. It's a shorthand notation. In fact, there's even a shorter notation. If I say x plus plus, let's look and see what that does. And you can see it incremented again by 1. Plus plus means add 1. This is, again, the same thing as saying x is equal to x plus 1. And these notations, I mean, they're just shorthands for the same thing, because a lot of times we write the same code and we want a shorter form, and it makes it a little bit more clear sometimes. But I can easily space these out. It doesn't really matter. Generally, I don't see spaces on this operator, but there's shorthands for subtraction too. So I can say minus equals 1. Doesn't have to be 1. It could be 3. Let's refresh. And we went from 8. I subtracted 3. Now I'm at 5. The minus minus is always a 1 operator, so we can see what it looks like now. Was at a 5, and now we're at a 4. Let's just shorten this back up just a tad, and let's look at some of the string operators. There's a lot of ways we can manipulate strings. One way is we just want to take two strings and we want to concatenate them together. And so let's do that. Let's say X is, I have my two strings up here, which are C and D. Let's go C plus D, and let's print out X now and see what it looks like. And you can see it's the two strings smashed together with no space. Wasn't expecting a space. I never put a space in here. If I wanted a space, I could have said X plus space plus D. It's like that. And if I refresh now, I should get the space between the Bob and the Cravens. Let's just try a few things that are a bit maybe odd. Let's try to add a number to a string. So let's say that X is equal to A plus C. So it's the number 5. We're going to add it to the string Bob, and let's see what we get on our output. I refresh this, and JavaScript did something maybe that you didn't expect. It took that number 5, it converted it into a string, and then it concatenated it with the string Bob. No space involved, which is maybe not intuitive. But if it can do a casting and change the data type to make something work, it will try to do that. Sometimes it's nonsensical though to do it. So if I did something like A, which is a number, divided by C, which is a string, let's see what JavaScript will do in this case. So it gives the result X is not a number, because A is a number and you're trying to divide it by string, which is not a number. And so it just sets the result to not a number, NaN. Let's do some comparisons down here. Sometimes we want to compare certain values. So for example, I have A and B, which are both numbers. A is 5 and B is 10. So let's console log out A, and we're going to see, is it equal to B? Let's see what that says. Now my ID is, it's barking at me saying, hey, I should probably replace this with a triple underscore, and we'll talk about that in a second. But let's go ahead and see what this says. So A equal to B, it's saying that's false because A is 5 and B is 10. And that makes sense. So A is not equal to B. So let's test that. Let's see if we can say something like console.log A is not equal to B. See if that's true or false. So we'll refresh this. And that's true. A is not equal to B. Now the reason this is barking is because when you just do it this way with a double equals or a exclamation equals, this is only declaring the values. So example here, what if I have X and I set it to the string of 5 and I say is X equal to A? So again, X, it's a string, has a value of 5. A is a number that has a value of 5. If I refresh this, X equals A, it says it's true. Now if I use this one, console.log, and I say X triple equals A, let's see what that says. That's false because they're not of the same data type. Remember, X is a string and A is a number, and even though JavaScript will try to cast that string to a number 5 or the number to a string and compare them that way, if you use the triple equal, casting is not allowed. It has to be the same data type, and then the values have to match. There's a couple of other operators we can use here. So console log, let's go A is greater than B. Again, A is 5 and B is 10. If I refresh this, that's false. I can say is A less than B. And I get that that is definitely true. And then there's less than or equal. We won't cover those. We covered the not equals. There's also a not equals with a double like that. So if you want to do the data type also, so you can do it that way too. Now what happens if you do a comparison operator on a string? So let's say console.log, remember my string value was C is Bob and D is Cravens. Is C less than D? Let's see about that. We refresh it and it says true. C is less than D. Remember, this is Bob and then Cravens. Lexically, if I take the first letters and I start comparing, B comes in the alphabet before C. And so that's the reason why it's saying that Bob is less than Cravens. And if I set, for example, let's say X is equal to all lowercase Bob. And again, remember, C is uppercase BOB. What happens if I compare these two and I say log is x equal to c? Let's see what it says here. It says false. They are not equal with a triple. Let's just look at doubles. And they are not equal with a double either, because lowercase b is not equal to uppercase b. Is x less than c? That is false. And the reason why this comparison turns false has to do with how letters are stored in code. Letters are stored using ASCII characters. An ASCII character, for example, for capital A is the number 65. And B is the one right after it, 66. And lowercase a has a value of 97, and lowercase b has a value of 98. When JavaScript is doing this comparison, x starts with a lowercase b, which is a 98, and is comparing it to the uppercase b, which is a 66. Is 98 less than 66? It is not. So that's false. And so that's the reason why we got a false over there. All right, finally, let's wrap this up with some Boolean operators. So we have these two Booleans here, E and F. I can ask things like this. So I can console log both E and F out just so we can see them again. So E is true and F is false. Just like when we verbally talk about things like A or B. So that means one of those has to happen. Or if we say something like A and B, that means they both have to happen. And so we can also do those Boolean operators. So we can say things like E or F, and we can also say things like E and F. This E or F operator, this should return true because E is true. And this E or F, they both have to be true before it can return true. And in this case, F is false, so the whole value will be false. So we'll refresh over here, and we can see down here at the very bottom, we get true for the OR operator and false for the AND operator. And we can combine things too. So we can do something like this, console.log E and not F. Think about what this is. So E is true, F is false, but not F is the opposite of F. So not F is true. So I have true and true. I'm expecting this to be true. So we refresh, we get true at the very bottom. So that's it for this video. I just wanted to quickly introduce the concept of operators. And then I also wanted to introduce a couple of these common operators here that we are going to run into very quickly when we're writing code. Next time, we're going to start talking about conditionals and how we can control the flow of our application through the different lines of code. We'll see you next time.